I just booked myself 5 days in a row, long shifts. That's all right. I just got to get through these 5 days. But it was like I joked, the person that made my schedule and the person that worked it were two different people.
Welcome to Leading Veterinary Teams, the podcast for people-first leaders in veterinary medicine who are ready to ditch the burnout script and lead with purpose. I'm Suzanne Thomas, veterinary technician, executive coach, and fellow leader in the trenches. Around here, we talk real-life leadership, boundaries, influence, team culture, and what it actually takes to build happy, high-performing hospitals. No fluff, no guilt, just the truth, some tools, and maybe a little tough love. If you're ready, let's get into it.
Get started with who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm Dr. Amber Parks. I am a veterinarian and I am the stress and burnout coach. I was in general practice for about 10 years and really felt the effects of burnout. And I had some changes in I was a little bit pulled away from the client forward facing thing. And I was working more with colleagues, which I really liked. And then the need, for veterinarians came kind of full force. And so I was kind of pushed back into your typical traditional clinical practice. And so I was just like, I got to get out. I am burnt out. I don't even care what I do. I just need to get out. And so, like many people, support staff, veterinarians are just like, I feel like I have this small skill set and what else can I do except veterinary medicine? And so in my fight or flight brain, I decided to go into relief work, which, long story short, I liked it. I absolutely don't regret it. I learned a lot, but I got a little bit better, but then I burnt out again. And so I always feel like that's important to share because anyone that's on the veterinary team, it seems to be this idea that if you're burnt out, go into relief work. Even for technicians, you'll feel so much better. And believe me, I felt like a rock star, like I'm making my own schedule. I'm basically naming my price. I'm making more money, working less. But long story short, it really was the way that I handled or didn't handle stress and the qualities that I am as a person. And that's why I burnt out again. And I see that a lot in veterinary medicine. So that has led me to want to help people in veterinary medicine and out too, but mostly veterinary medicine that are experiencing kind of that feeling of being stuck and the feeling that they don't feel, they feel burnt out, but they don't have any options. And it's an awful place to be. So I'm really here for that now to help people through that.
Yeah, I think it's really needed and necessary, especially, I mean, like you said, even going into relief work and stuff like that, just because you make your own schedule, just because you have the ability to do that doesn't mean you're not also going to burn out, right? Because I don't know about you, but I'm that like high performer, high achiever type of person. And going into relief work, I could overschedule myself and get to the point where I'm scheduling every single day. And I don't know if that's what happened to you, but like I know you call yourself like a hustle culture dropout. Is that what happened? Did you like schedule yourself every single day?
Yeah, it was a combination. It was that. And I do what I did as an associate. I'd be like, all right, I just booked myself 5 days in a row, long shifts. That's all right. I just got to get through these 5 days. But it was like I joked, the person that made my schedule and the person that worked it were two different people. Like it was depending on what I felt that day. So it was that, but then it was also when you're in the clinic and you're working. And I know for a lot of people, interactions with clients can be challenging. So like you still have to do that. And I didn't have the tools to know how to manage that. And I felt like I really had to make sure every client was taken care of, like bending over backward, people pleasing, so it was that too. So, but I'm like, okay, so yeah, it's me. Like,
Yeah.
yes, there's environments that can exacerbate it, but if I don't get to the root of the problem, I'm just going to continually be on this hamster wheel.
Yeah, so what you just said there, right? The root of the problem. I know that you, from just looking at some of the content and stuff that you have online, you talk a lot about the root of the problem, and I know that that often is what gets missed. So I guess how do you define burnout, and then how do you spot that? Like, where does it come from? Where how do you spot it in yourself? How do you spot it in your team before it takes over?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think burnout is really stress just on a long, prolonged period of time. So stress is really, yes, to work without stress is not really feasible. And honestly, there's a little bit of stress that's helpful, but it's when it's continuous, there's no ebbs and flows, and it just is getting worse. And it can look a little bit different for everyone, but physical and emotional exhaustion, even if all you do is sleep on your time off, a lot of like irritability, cynicism, like I experienced that a lot. Um, I just put a post out recently about like anger. I think it was a post. And that was another one that it gets missed a lot. And I think there's things in our profession that may anger us, but your capacity to deal with that and actually manage that, I think is the differentiating factor. Like if little things are driving you crazy or you're seeing that in other people, I think that's a red flag. And just it is one of these things that I think, to sum it up, it's like if you're going to work every day and the little things that happen on a typical day are like ruining you, like that's
Yeah.
or your coworker, like that's a red flag that there's something there, because you've reached your capacity and your ability to try and manage that is like non-existent. And then it
Yeah.
it just flows into our personal lives too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of times when I talk to clinics or I'm a leadership, right? So I talk to managers and stuff like that, and a lot of times they tell me, well, burnout just comes with the job. What do you
Oh,
say to what do you say to that person, right? That is just like quietly resigned themselves to like this is just part of it, right? Like that's just what we do,
yeah, I hear that too. And a small piece of me dies when I hear that, because
right?
I always tell people, like, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal.
Right.
And I likened it to one time I told a client I had their little small breed dog and he had luxating patellas. And I was explaining what they were. They're like, oh yeah, I heard that's really normal. I'm like, no, no, common, but it's not normal to have. So it like puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
I think that in the last 5, 10 years, the awareness piece for burnout is very prevalent in veterinary medicine, which is good. But I also think we haven't caught up fully to the solution to that. And so we're almost in that in between, is what I feel. There's solutions out there, there's fixes for it, but I don't think it's as commonly known as, okay, yeah, we know it's a problem and it is what it is. And so I think there's part of that that's behind that too.
Yeah, so then how do you this might be like a big question, but how do you combat that, right? Like from your practice and the conversations that you have, what is the angle that you take to combat that?
Yeah, so I love that question, because I think that regardless of all the things that we can do as a team, which I think that's incredibly important, I also think if we look at it at the very big picture, it's like the only thing we can control is ourselves. We can't control other people's reactions, although we try. And so I always look inward. Okay, even if I'm in maybe not so great work environment, how can I almost like protect myself and my peace of mind and my, you know, well-being to be able to either get through that or get through it and change jobs. Or so I think it all comes down to you as a person, because, and this is a part I don't think is as a awareness as the burnout piece. Burnout, we always look externally for the solution, like, and there's absolutely, like, there's things that need to change and I think they're getting better, but hoping that the schedule changes so maybe there's less workload, or hoping that that person comes back from their vacation and it will lessen the workload, hoping that your next client isn't rude. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we can hope all day long, but when we look internally and be like, all right, how can I as a person manage that stress better? And that's what I
Yeah.
think it comes down to.
Yeah, and I resonate with that, right? Because for me, I've had to find little pockets of time. I'm a mom of twins. They're 7 now, but I've had to, over the last 7 years, I've had to find pockets of time for myself, or else I would have lost myself, right? And so those have been integral for me to maintain my sanity, through
Yep.
work, through home life, through everything. And people are like, I don't know how you do it all. I'm like, it's because I go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, how do you go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning? I'm like, because it's the only time I have for me. So I choose to not sleep and go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, because that's, if I don't do that, you don't want the Suzanne that doesn't do that. And so like those are some of the things. And listen, I get it. There's some
Yes.
people that like that's not an option for them. But for me, that is what makes me able to me, right? And so for me, like my advice to people when they ask me like how do you do the things is like find the pockets of time that work for you so that you can decompress, so that you can do you, whether that's the vacation. Some people need like the week-long vacation. I have my vacation every morning at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
You know what I
Love
mean?
that.
So, but I agree. I think that there's a responsibility for each individual person. And then taking that like leadership lens, I think there's also some things that we can do to kind of create the conditions for people to be able to recover, and conditions for people to be able to make space in our clinics and around, right? Like we know that we have hard jobs. We know that it's hard. And when there's those days where there's back-to-back euthanasias, like being able to create
Yeah.
space for our teams to feel, right? And to be able to take a step back, to tag in, to tag out if you need to. I think those things are important, because if you don't, that's where the compassion fatigue comes in. That's where the burnout comes in. That's where those things, that's like where that stuff leads to if you don't tackle it head on. I'm hoping that
Yeah.
I'm like you agree, you're saying yes. So I like
Yeah.
I'm like not wrong there, right?
Yeah. Well, and to your point, just like you're saying, creating space for that and know that it's funny, like we hear, well, burnout's just inevitable, but then we also hear, but don't bring it to work and don't, make it something that we talk about. So like
Right.
giving that permission to be like, hey, that was a rough case, or there were several euthanasias in a row. Like, what do you need? Sometimes that's all
Yeah.
we have to ask. And we're a very giving profession. And I think sometimes we want to give, but sometimes we just have to ask what someone needs. And it might be a couple minutes alone or a quick chat with a close friend, like just,
Yeah.
I think it gets overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, what are some of the signs that a team is kind of stuck in that burnout loop, and especially if nobody's talking about it. And you just said like nobody's saying it out loud, and I was like, exactly the next question that I was just gonna ask you, right? Like nobody's talking about it, but we know it's happening, right? Like
Yes.
somebody just
Yes.
needs to say it out loud, and it's it sometimes it's takes that one person to have the courage to be like, call it out, right? We got to do something about this,
Yes.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say when I was a newer doctor, I had very much that I graduated in '09. So this was, a decade ago, but I felt like showing that was not okay, and showing your emotion, and I thought it was like unprofessional. Like that's just how I was raised. And it's the same
Hmm.
thing of like why we have the hustle culture, I think, is because we've tied our self-worth to being how productive we are and how much we can cram in one day. And so we don't have time to be emotional. And so I've actually come a complete 180 out of that. And I'm like, life is too short to just work ourselves to the point. Like, if you need some time to gather yourself, I think that's totally normal and it's human to do that for sure. So I think when I look at teams, especially as a relief vet, that was the really cool part because I got to see the dynamics of everyone and how it worked. And there were a lot of similarities, and I'm one, like, I like to have fun at work. I like to laugh. I like to joke. Anyone that works with me, like, if I can't make someone laugh, then something's wrong. Um, and vice versa. But if the cynicism, like the really bad,
Hmm.
miserable person who's always cynical is always miserable, like that to me is like you are burnt out until proven otherwise, is how
Hmm.
I see that. And there's a lot that goes into that too. I don't want to say that's a blanket statement, but the other side of that too is I will say sometimes when I'm talking to teams, they're like, well, there's toxic positivity. And I'm like, okay, I love to address this because sometimes I think that we've seen that as the solution, or it looks like that when, we're getting talked to from a manager or supervisor. And I'm like, well, the difference though is, to me, toxic positivity is, all right, guys, it's going to be a tough day, but we got it. We can do it. And the way that the schedule was done is a complete train wreck. And we just continually live that train wreck over and over again. Like we're ignoring
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah.
But when we know, like, okay, there's something we can do different here, and we're going to change that, but we're in the moment. Now let's focus on the good stuff. That's the difference for me. And I think until I realized that, I was really, especially when I was really burnt out, those people that were really positive really annoyed me.
Yeah. It's that like turning the focus of the like giving the pizza party because like that's how we're gonna just like slap a pizza party on it and slap a sticker on it, make it okay, where your schedule is still like constant and there's no changing anything. But if your team actually really likes pizza, like that's not toxic positive. Like if that's what they're asking for, like that's actually not a bad thing, right? Like I just spoke to Lynn Blake on one of the other podcast episodes, and she like talks about little treat culture, and she's always treating her team, and I love that, and it is so positive, but it's not treats for the sake of treats. It's not positivity for like the sake of positivity. It's because she really cares about her team, and they like she goes out of her way to do little things for the people in ways that she knows that they're going to appreciate it. She finds out the things that they like, and she does things out of like out of nowhere for like, they do something, she notices it, she like thanks them. She does those things for like that's the culture she's built. And it's not
Mhm.
at the same time as like going crazy with their schedule and burning them out, right? It's that to me would be not the same as like it's
Yes.
almost like your messaging doesn't align, right? Like
Yeah.
if your team is getting burnt out because your schedule is crazy and then you're just like throwing a pizza party on it, well, that's a problem. But if your team is getting burnt out and you notice that and you're like, wait, how can we fix this schedule so that we can actually work better, more efficient, or maybe train our team to be able to work through this schedule? Maybe the schedule is not the problem. Maybe there's a training issue, or like figure out what the issue is,
Yes.
like figure out how to fix that issue, whether it's the schedule or whatever the mix is with the schedule. Maybe it's too many sick appointments, maybe it's not enough wellness, whatever that is, right? Like whatever your shtick is.
Yeah,
And then, and then maybe the pizza party is not the thing that is making you pissed off because you've figured out the problem. Because the pizza party
right.
is actually not
Yeah.
so bad if we like pizza.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and like you said, like it's doing it with intention. Like sometimes I
Right.
think the pizza party is given because, all right, we know we just screwed you guys royally in the last 3 days and
Right.
you're running yourself ragged, but
Right.
here's a pizza. Whereas
Here's
it's
some
like,
food.
hey, what can I do for you to support you? And here's a solution that we're doing. Like those are completely two different intentions. Yeah.
Right. 100%. I think that if we try to we talked about at the beginning, right? If we try to figure out what the root cause of whatever the issue is and make some changes, we might not be able to fix everything, right? Because especially if
Sure.
the root cause is clients that are not compliant or constant euthanasias, right? Like if we work in a shelter environment, might not be able to fix that root cause. But if we're able to make it easier in any way, do that, whatever that looks like for you, right? And then add on whatever the treat is or whatever makes your team feel good. But you have to talk to your team. You have to talk to your people
Right.
and
Right.
find out what that is. I think that sometimes in leadership is the missing piece is that what I talk to leaders, at least, I don't know if you experience this too. When I talk to leaders, they come to me and they're like, I don't know what the problem is. I'm like, well, did you ask them?
Yes.
Did you
Yes.
have the conversation?
Be human. It's that piece. Same thing. Yeah.
Right. And you just said too, you when you were just out of vet school, you were like almost scared to show emotion. That wasn't professional. And I find that so interesting because I think that there is this like shift almost in what does professional look like and what does that mean? And I think that there's people questioning that now and maybe professional is still a little bit of that, but maybe there's a human side to it. Maybe, being a vulnerable person actually showing up as a vulnerable leader, showing up in your hospital as the hospital manager that can say like, "Look, I screwed up. My
Yes.
bad.
Yes.
I'm a human and I screwed up and I'm not going to do it again." Right? And I'm sorry that I bulked out your schedule like that. I'm not going to do it again. And stuff like that.
Yes.
Or, hey, we work for a corporate group and I have to do this because this is what I'm like that's my job. And I know that that's not working, but how do we make this work? This is what I'm being told I have to do.
Right.
How do we make this work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like just being honest. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
I know it's scary, but like it's not that hard.
Well, and what I've found too is sometimes, I won't say this is straight across the board, but, and this is like, I think any profession, someone that is in a leadership role that is confident in themselves is much more likely to be like, I screwed up than someone that maybe has a lot of insecurities that they're trying to not show that on the front. And so they won't ever show that vulnerability. And in their mind, they think that they're showing up as a more confident leader when it's actually the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And I think that a lot of times it takes a long time to get to that level of confidence and
Sure.
being allowing yourself to screw up enough to then get to a point where you're not scared that you're going to get even as a leader, right? Like you're not scared you're going to
Yes.
get fired if you screw up or you're not scared that you're whatever it is you're scared of, right? And I think I've gotten to the level of just like I am who I am, and I'm like, you take it or leave it. It's who I am. But I know that there's a lot of people that just they haven't gotten to that point, and I often have to remember that
Yes.
not everybody's there. So yeah, but that's a really good point. Yeah, and I think in vet med we also I think I mentioned it before. We deal with a lot of high achievers, and oftentimes when we deal
Yes.
with high achievers, we wind up, accidentally becoming micromanagers or worse, kind of causing the very burnout that we're trying to fix. Right? In your practice, do you
Yes.
see that? Do you like what do you do to kind of help people through that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's the biggest thing I see for burnout is that we tend to be, no matter, support staff, receptionists, like we are all, for the most part, high achieving, type A perfectionists. The problem is, and that's why I say, like, you can change the job and your environment, but you're still going to be that same person. So what's going to happen is that, and I used to do this too, I was a perfectionist. So, and if people are listening and they hear this, tell me if this sounds familiar. You would be like, all right, I'm going to do, like, maybe it's discharge notes, and you're like, oh, I could have so and so do, you know what? I'm just going to do it myself because I'm faster and I'll do it right. And so in your mind, that's cool, but you just added to your workload,
Hmm.
especially with doctors not utilizing their support staff that are so capable of so many more things. Like
Speaking
that's a
my language.
huge, oh my gosh, it's the secret to being efficient. And I think on the business side, being a much lucrative business, but that's topic for another day. But I think that's where we get hung up. Perfectionism, I used to think was something that we strive for when really we're trying to avoid failure or disappointment or judgment. So we don't want to see that. So we're just going to try to do it really perfect. But that's also where procrastination comes in too. So, like, it's this whole big thing. And then you could throw in, people pleasing tendencies. So we have a hard time saying no, so we just add that onto our plate. So we have all these things. Sometimes it's so hard to see like what is truly important because in our mind everything's important and we have to do everything 100% right. So that's why it's a hamster wheel. It's just a cycle if we don't learn how to change that.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. That is has to be a topic for another day because it would turn into a whole nother conversation. I not to like plug myself, but I wrote a book about tech utilization and empowering your teams. And
Love
for
it.
that exact reason, because if you go into a clinic and you have doctors who are like pulling blood with
No,
the
yeah,
technician
no.
holding, hello,
Yes.
just let
Yes.
your tech do the job that your tech went to school
Yep.
for. Because then at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're spending 4 hours
Yep.
at home doing notes where you could have been doing that anyway. So
Yeah.
it's like, and then you're wondering why you're tired and burnt out and like you're working 24/7 and it's just so inefficient and for everyone. And then you have your team who's not empowered to do anything and then they
Right.
feel underutilized and they don't want to be here anymore because then there goes that cynicism and they're burnt out because they are like sitting there like, well, they don't even need me, so what am I
Yep.
here for, and it's just this like negative loop, so it's a hamster wheel of negativity even.
Sure.
So yeah, it's multifaceted for sure. There's so many contributing factors that come kind of from everywhere. And I think another thing that we sort of touched a little bit on too was that ability to kind of create space for our team members and even our managers and ourselves to be able to speak up about our capacity and what we can do
Mhm.
and what we can't do and that fear of not being able to do all of the things and that fear of being seen as lazy maybe or not a team player, I think, would you say that kind of fits in there too?
Yeah, for sure. And I think what happens a lot is that we try to minimize all those things so that we, again, show up and put on like a professional front, but we're like crumbling inside. And what I find too is that then sometimes we all have a point, but you get to the point that you're like, okay, now I'm like fed up, I'm angry, I've had, and then you blow up, and it's like, well, okay, that didn't go over well, and that's probably not going to solve any problems. So it is managing those emotions, I think, when they come up, recognizing them, but also just know that if we don't deal with those emotions, they don't, case in point, I'm right here. I did this, like you're at a busy ER, it's just craziness, and you're like, okay, and then you don't deal with it, it doesn't go away, it just festers. And that
Yeah.
is something obviously that isn't healthy. So having that kind of open door policy, I think, is like a two-way communication is crucial.
Yeah, for sure. If someone listening is thinking, this sounds like me, but I don't know even where to start, what would you tell them?
Yes. So I think two things. One is if you are listening and you feel like this is you and you don't know where to start, that's also very common because you are overloaded to the max. And so two things. One is that just as like a quick thing you can do, especially if you're at work and you're like, holy smokes, I'm incredibly stressed right now. Stop for 2 seconds, go to the bathroom. That's my favorite thing. I always go to the bathroom for 5 minutes and just be like, okay, what is in my control right now? Because, and I have literally made myself sick over anxiety of like worrying about stuff that I don't have any control over. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's the cure for anxiety, but it
Yeah.
prioritizes things because when we can focus on the things that we have control over and we can see a better outcome, then you feel more empowered instead of knowing, thinking something bad's going to happen, seeing it happen and feeling really powerless. So focus on what is in your control. And I think the second thing would be if you're feeling stuck, is to have a plan. And by plan, I don't mean you have to have this all worked out, but have like, okay, I'm going to talk to someone. I'm going to like, you just have one step that you have to take, or you come and talk to me. And because what happens is we don't do anything and we stay stuck and it gets worse. And then we are really just kind of feel the squeeze of like, what the heck do I do now? And so it doesn't feel great when you don't have a plan. You don't have to have the answer. You just have to take the first step to solving.
Yeah, of course. I've kind of a loaded question.
Do it. Okay.
What's what's the legacy that you hope to leave through this work?
Oh, I love this. Honestly, so for really dreaming big, which is only how I dream now, I think that changing the culture of veterinary medicine, because I just know like so many of us are just really kind-hearted, amazing humans, but that's also why we're burnt out. And so recognizing that's okay, but also recognizing that you can set boundaries and still be an amazing human in this profession for the longevity. That's another crucial piece. So that is what I would love. And I would love even more if we're teaching that before we, push out our support staff members from school and our veterinarians from school as well. Set them off the right foot.
Yeah, teach them how to say no really, really early.
Yes, yes, yes.
I
It's
love
crucial.
that. I love that. Well, before we go, is there anything, any lasting thoughts, anything on your heart that you're like burning to share? And then where can people find you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is before you feel like you have to leave the profession, just look at and talk to people about different opportunities of what that might look like. And, whether that's me, another coach, a trusted supervisor or manager, because I think that we tend to just want to get away from the pain and we don't really know where we're going, but it better be better than what we're experiencing. So
Yeah.
I think that is first and foremost, there's help out there. If anyone that's listening is interested, you can go, my Instagram is at the stress and burnout coach, and there's underscores between each of those words. And then my website is the stressandburnoutcoach.com. And it's one of those things that I do one-on-one coaching and I have it so that everyone's experience is different and everyone's like triggers are different. So that's why it's very much individually approached to like what is on your heart, what is really like, let's just get you out of feeling miserable as fast as possible. So I hope to do that for anyone that I come in.
I love that. I love the work that you're doing. I think it is so, so important. And I think that if it sounds to me in the the conversations that we just had and the brief conversations that we've had on in do you call it instant message? No, you don't. It's direct message, right? Like DMs.
Yeah, yeah,
Instant. I just aged myself. Um,
myself too.
aim. No, the like Jesus. The messaging, on Instagram,
Yeah.
the back and forth. I think that it sounds like we both are like, if we can touch one person, if we can help one person, it sounds like we are very much aligned in that. Of, there are. I'm not a huge fan of like the unicorn clinic deal,
Mhm.
but really honestly, there are people in this industry, in this profession that want to build cultures of not
Yes.
toxic positivity, but positive cultures, want to hold people accountable, want to allow people to have work life integration, want to have balance, whatever that looks like for you, want to be able to enjoy the profession. Like, we are good hearted people. And I really do. I agree with you. I think that, you know, I meet so many people. I mean, I literally just put out not Instagram, a LinkedIn post the other day, was like, pick
Mhm.
me. I want to be a speaker. And I've gotten so many people who are like, I have tips. I have people I know. I'll get you connected. And I'm like,
That's
this
yeah.
is amazing. Like, all
Yes.
I did was just ask a
Yeah.
couple of
Yep.
like a little bit of a small little network that I have on LinkedIn. All I did was ask the question, and look at all these people who have reached out and are like, "I'm happy to help." And I'm like, "You don't know me from Adam, and you're just willing to help just because, right? Because they're like,
Yeah.
let's give this girl a chance, And so you just don't know until you ask. And I think that instead of just like what you said, instead of just piecing out and hiding away, reach
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
because there's people out here willing to help. And I might not be the best person to coach people through burnout, but I know Dr. Amber Parks, and I'm happy to I'm happy to refer and, also help through all of the things too, because we've all been through it. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank
I
you
love
so,
that.
so much.
Thank you
That
so much
Thanks
for
for
the
listening to
opportunity. I
Leading
had a lot of
Veterinary
fun.
Teams on Air. If this episode hit home, share it with a colleague, tag us on Instagram or TikTok, or leave a review. And don't forget to subscribe. It helps more leaders like you find their way. And remember, your job is not to do it all, it's to lead in a way that lasts. I'll see you next time.